Yeah, I've been saying this for a long time regarding which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of deal regarding like the Bible. Like, I have always had this sense like, who created this shit? Who wrote this stuff? Why do we put so much blind faith and trust in the biblical stories? And then the prophecy stuff is like basically saying, you know, buy into the doom and the gloom of the end of the world. And in reality, I'm over here going, so what kind of life do we have if we're anticipating a doom and gloom future? It's almost like, again, going back into the planting the seed of despair in people. Like, what do you got to live for when there's doom and gloom around the corner? The end of the world, the prophecy, the revelations, it's all coming to realization. It's, the Nostradamus predictions are coming true, or Edgar Casey, or whatever. It's like, people aren't living their lives because they're anticipating these stories to play out. And so they've gotten people so under the spell of a story. Oh, really, really, really good story too, right? They can tell. And they know that people are hooked because they've been indoctrinated from the start. Or just like that video I posted about the NASA scientists, basically doing that study on children to find out what makes a genius. Or the guy was disgusted when he went on to the adults because basically they teach out of it. They indoctrinate and they remove any type of creativity and individual unique thinking by infiltrating their stories, the doom and the gloom. It's all connected. It's like, talk people out of their passions and their curiosities and their creative mind, the collective collaboration of creation, because that is what we're meant here to do. And then you've got a whole bunch of zombies, robots programmed to support an agenda all along. And it's kind of a side note of it, but the caduceus and the returning to the void at a certain point. What if each iteration of this existence, this life, is a certain amount of people, souls, that get the rite of passage through? And then the Big Bang thing, coming out of the void, recreates and starts anew based on where it left off. So the rite of passage would be, let's say, we'll just use the 144,000. I mean, it's just all fucking stories anyway, whatever. But the truth is, it's all about getting people to comply, to manifest. And we know this. We know that they're not original, that they're coming from the perspective of they have to influence us to do their dirty work, because that hidden hand never gets dirty. It just uses us as extensions of its arm, military industrial complex, it's all in dust, returning to dust to dust, ashes to ashes. We return to where we came from. Industry. That's interesting too. Or indust the tree, taking all the trees and making them dust. Wow. Okay, there's more there. But yeah, so all of these prophecies, the prophets profit from the ignorance of us putting such blind faith into their prophecy. It's all about getting a person to dismiss and abandon themselves in favor of them and their story and what they want us to create. And that's the part we have to break that spell. They've been doing this for a very long time. We don't even know when it began. And again, that's part of that constant, the man's search for meaning. It's the continuous, am I abandoned by my creator? Like, I got to prove myself for him to come back. Why am I not worthy of my creator, that I have to do all these things? And then, fearful, vengeful God. And and like, what is really going on? I'm so confused. I don't know where I originated. I don't know where I came from. I don't know my roots, my bloodline, my family. Like, I only know what I know here now. And how that actually gets us to abandon us being here now. It's always about distracting us. It's the Wetico, the mind virus, getting us to get stuck in the stories of the past, but yet not recognizing the duplicity and the two sides of the coin, the full story of the past. There's the past that has been told to us. There's the past that really occurred. And then there's the version, the perception, the understanding. There's two there too. What we think we understand, but the Gnostic understanding that we sense, and how is it really interpreted? How much of it are we learning from? How much of it are we working from? How much of it is actually holding us back because we're not in our present daily life? We're being hijacked all the time. And so, interestingly, you brought up, and I've said this too, this also resonates with the whole Bible thing, like, get a bunch of people, the oldest book to get people to believe in, to put such blind faith in. Like, nobody ever questions the fact that a man had to write that down. I mean, there was an authority hand making people write hand by hand, copying exactly what had been originally written, but the hidden hand was the first writer of that book. And then it just used the authoritarianism in its infiltration to enforce the hands of others to carry that forward, to make copies of that, to reinforce it, to get people to believe it as if it weren't written by man. But it was. Man created the story, created God in his image. And we're worshiping the man, not the God, not the true source of our souls, our collective. And it's so interesting how people can so easily turn to a scripture to validate, to justify, to confirm what they've been told. Not original thought, not an inner gnosis, not a Gnostic teaching, but one of prophecy, where the prophets, the false prophets, profit from your ignorance. So, just like you were referring and mentioning how, we know they can make holograms in the sky and make it appear real. We've known about this. We know the technology's there. China has been doing it for a very long time when they were doing the Chinese New Year. And in Japan, maybe they were doing it. Maybe in the Asian countries, you see these images up in the sky. And I think they've also been doing it maybe out in Vegas, where they project these images up in the sky, like the shark coming out of the sky and crashing into water in the sky, all this stuff. We know the technology exists, but for how long has this technology existed? Did we always have this technology, even during the times that people claim we were less advanced? Even though I don't think we were less advanced, I think we've actually devolved, not evolved in so many ways. They've deliberately made it so that we are in a devolution. They set up the system, the indoctrination, just like the genius study, regarding the teaching. That you can teach the genius out of a child by replacing it with uncreative, non-thinking memorization, MK Ultra. Like reward, punishment, solution type training. You get rewarded when you do well on their exams, which are just memorization and regurgitation. Stories and discussions around things we've been told, but we don't know. There's no proof. There's no history that we can tangibly equate to it. We're only regurgitating what we've been told. It's the indoctrination nation. And so you can teach the genius out of somebody by putting them in the industrial education system, which was never meant to be under the government, which is the ruling of the mind. Hello, people, it's all there for you. And by doing that, they have done us a disservice, even though people think they are supposed to be taking care of us. It was communities that taught us growing up what was necessary to live a free life, uninhibited by these rules and regulations. That in those old schoolhouses, you learned about your sovereignty, your inalienable rights, your God-given liberties to pursue life with happiness, joy, to take care of each other, work together. Our government doesn't teach that, or even doesn't even enforce or promote that. Our government actually causes the wedges between us, deliberately, intentionally. If you just watch the TV, the media, the mediary, they cut the wedge with even the languaging. We need to tell you what to think about your fellow humans. You can't trust them. Trust us to tell you who to trust, even though they're not amongst us. Teaching is actually not teaching the way that they have it set up. They're setting us up to set them up, not setting us up to set us up for success. More so to keep us in line with their perceived success. So when we go back to, again, we're going to go back to this hologram stuff. And this is kind of a theory in the back of my mind. I've thought about this quite a bit over the years. I used to get upset when people said, oh, this is the prophecies and this. And I'm like, no, stop right there, please. Please don't. Because you are contributing to the manifestation. The people who have studied the most have been brainwashed the deepest. They are the most supportive of the system that entraps and imprisons us. Keeps us in this cycle, this loop of being a good doobie, following the rules and doing as we're told. Go along and get along. You're not supposed to color outside the lines. You got to stay within your lane. All these horrible, horrible sayings that are basically ways to control one another. But when people start parroting off the scriptures and talking about the prophecies because they're in the doom and gloom indoctrination, they're anticipating it because that's how they were raised, to always look for the worst case scenario, to anticipate the worst. And then again, it's the power of manifestation. They understand that your thoughts are your currency, that you're paying for your experience, and you have no clue that they're utilizing you to do their dirty work because they've got you focusing on it because they planted the seed in you. They gave you the vision. That's not your vision. See, they wiped your vision by teaching you theirs. See how that worked? The education system was to teach out of you your creative, unique thinking, your vision, your purpose, your path, your passion, your gift, to push that out and put it in there in replace of it. Their system has always been to replace you with what they want you to be. Creating the robot, creating the new arm, the non-thinking human that just does as it's told, doesn't question anything, doesn't cause problems because they don't like problems. They want you to be a part of their system, to reinforce it and to force it and force it. Because ultimately, you're not their power. And they're not our power. You are uniquely you. But they try, and that's the whole point of their indoctrination system of education is to push you out and replace you with their vision of what they want you to be. So this is why the genius can easily be taught out of you, taking all of your passion, basically this is the looshing and the harvesting of your energy. When they're able to infiltrate and take out of you what you naturally, innately came in with this life to do, that is the biggest travesty against humanity. Those are crimes against humanity. Is stealing your soul, because that's your essence. That is your soul, that is your essence, is your presence, is the gift that you came in here with. And they're teaching that out of people. And people are so oblivious to it because they're under the spell. So when they're repeating these doctrines, they don't even realize they've been programmed to manifest it, to bring the prophecy to light, to bring it to life. And then, because the mind likes to be right, the mind can say, see, I was right. But it wasn't even you all along. It's actually a false sense of self. It's not even your own mind. It's the Wetico mind virus that has been infiltrated. The idea that what you thought was your original thought wasn't even yours. That it was planted in you, implanted, right? This is, see, the mark of the beast. People are talking about, getting chips in their brains. You don't even need a chip in your brain. It's already been implanted long before you even knew about the technology. And these technologies, I believe, have been around a lot longer than they want us to know or believe. Like as if this is all new. I mean, we've known that 25, 30 years worth of technology is being withheld from us at this moment as we speak. Or maybe more. And that what they do allow us to have access to is not even nearly what they're capable of or what we're capable of. So let's backtrack to this technology of holograms and the idea of these books and these scriptures, these doctrines, these prophecies, these predictions that have been implanted into the minds of the many, because the Bible is one of the most well-known and remembered scripture that most people have learned. Not 100%, but they've gotten enough of what they want you to get inside. Because the people purporting, speaking, telling the stories, because you got to remember, back in the day, they didn't want people to be able to read. They didn't want them to know they could actually do their own research. But was it really that they didn't want people to read and they just wanted to have people repeat what they were told and keep the story going? Or was it also part of that authoritarian reverse psychology, that if we tell you you can't read, you'll go out to try to read, and then we'll create books that you'll read, and that'll actually be there's that two sides of the story. We get you to understand what we want you to understand, because when you read the book, because we put good books out there and we put bad books out there, and you have to learn to discern what is truth and what is not, and what is really what gnosis inspires within you, what you can relate and sense is real and true to your heart and soul, versus what is trying to implant itself within you and remove that individual thinking, that ability to discern, that ability to think creatively, original thought. It's very rare, because most everything we know and have been speaking about, talking about, conversations, none of it's original. It's all repeated. We're all a bunch of parrots saying the same thing over and over again. It takes a whole lot to go deeper than where we're at. But it's a conversation, I'm sure, that's been had across all time and space. So if you have these doctrines and you get enough people to believe in them, to anticipate them, you can also get them to manifest them. The prophecy says that the world's going to come to an end. But, these are interpretations. And they only know how to give you the doom and gloom because people will avoid the pain, which is a form of manifesting it too. Basic psychology says that addiction is really not about the addiction that you reach for. It's you reach for the substance or the action, whatever addictive behavior you have, to numb out the pain of the trauma that is unresolved, to avoid the punishment, to avoid the abandonment, whatever the wound is in you, the being rejected, whether you're being rejected, whether you're being abandoned, called out and embarrassed in front of other people, whatever the wound is in your past, you will avoid that. So basic psychology is that it's not about the addiction and what you reach for. It's always about what are you trying to avoid that you are reaching in a different direction, that you are suppressing, but yet it is expressing. Because until you address it, it will be your dominant driver and motivator to do what you do, and that's what you do. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. It's rampant, but most people don't recognize their own patterns and the behaviors. Usually it takes someone else on the external to actually observe what is happening, mirroring it back. And it's so funny that people will recognize things in others that they don't realize are really coming from themselves. That what they're seeing in another that they dislike or that they admire is actually a reflection of themselves that they don't own. And they don't recognize it because they don't honor and express it the way it's meant to be expressed. So the psychology of all these different ways to get people to manifest works on both sides. We will put the fear in you so that you will avoid it, which is just as powerful as going for it. Think about that. You are always going to have the person that you tell, don't touch the hot stove, they're going to touch it. You know, when you're a child, they tell you, don't touch the hot stove because you're going to burn yourself. But see, as a child, you have to learn certain things for yourself to understand it. So you touched it because you didn't understand what he meant by don't touch it because it'll burn you. And then you have the children who listen and follow the rules. We're all different spectrums of this. So they build it into the system with this awareness that you're going to have people go against the grain and who will follow the grain. So if you tell people you shouldn't read, we'll put some books out there so that when I know you're going to go read it because I told you not to, it's going to steer you back in my direction so that you'll manifest for me. So again, the Bible is the oldest book. It's the most read book throughout all the world. Not everywhere. And then there's other versions that are very much on the same storyline. You know, across all religions, it's the same story. The crucifixion, all the stuff is the same. And so you've got people who are afraid of it, who anticipate it, because that's how you manifest it. And then you've got people who believe so wholeheartedly in it that they're looking for it. So you got the people who are trying to avoid it in fear, and the people who are looking for it in fear. It's quite the interesting psychology and dynamic, and it's what's happening all the time. So with all of that, interestingly enough, not everybody's aware of what they're actually capable of and the power of their mind and the currency of their thoughts and how they manifest. But the whole system is aware of how that works. So let's go back to the prophets and the prophecies. This anticipation of wars and burnings and this, that, and the other. I mean, if the books are telling a story, then people are just going along with the story and playing their roles to manifest it in real life. Just like when you watch movies and people are like, oh my gosh, that's just like that movie. Which came first, the movie or the actual event? Is it really that original? Or maybe it was just priming you to be prepared. Or like I said to someone earlier today, I said it's all about desensitizing you. So you see something enough, you don't even see it anymore. Like when movies originally back in the day, they didn't have violence immediately in the beginning of the book. So the movies, like there were movies that the violence was so many minutes into the book, not the book, the movie. And so people watching these movies, you know, were like shocked. But then as time went on, movies would have violence within the first few seconds of the movie. And like it desensitized people to get used to seeing violence. So now you see it in movies and you don't think anything of it out in the world. I mean, when was the last time you watched the news and they told you something good? They're showing you the violence. They are priming you and your nervous system to accept it as normal. A trauma response. Like, especially with most people who are unhealed in their traumas, they're already numbed out to it because of the fact that they don't want to re-experience it. So we respond from the level at which we are whole or unhealed. So we see trauma around us and we numb out to it, but we're in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. A lot of people, believe it or not, they freeze. They freeze in the face of their unhealed traumas. It's probably more common than the fight or the flight, is the freeze. They're completely catatonic. They don't know what to say. They don't know. They just literally freeze. And so when things are happening around them, they're totally checked out. And we have a lot of that right now in the world. And so let's look at the holograms. You know, you can create an image in the sky, a second coming, a Jesus, a Buddha, you know, whatever in the world, anywhere. You can put some aliens up there. I mean, if they're really aliens, do we really need a government agency to act as our intermediary? That part right there just is a sign for me. It's a clue that it's not real. Yeah, the government's going to disclose stuff? What? Are you telling me they're the only ones that know? That's absurd. It's obnoxious. I think it is our government. I think they make shit up like everything else. I think that's all connected. They're all stories. Everything's a freaking story. And it's whether or not you go along with the story, you believe the story, you retell the story, you keep participating in the story. Like, why aren't you writing your own story? Why aren't you living your own life? Why are we still going along to get along with this bullshit? But the hologram thing, because people have to see things to believe them, or they, you know, but they don't believe what they don't see, right? Like there's some crazy, they believe stuff they don't see all the time. You know, and this is the thing of going back to the desensitization and the different psychologies around the way they do things. They literally set people up to be desensitized so that they won't freak out. They won't get as angry. This is the bread and circus. This is the Roman Forum again. You know, this is the whole, you know, keep them all sedated with alcohol and food like bread. You know, it totally puts you in a submissive mode. So you don't react. You don't respond. You don't get upset. You're like completely like numbed out to it in the freeze mode, if you even notice it, so that they can get away with doing things in front of your face and you don't even see it. Like, the sleight of hand. Here we go. The hidden hand is so good at the sleight of hand. I remember living in Naples, Italy. I was with a friend. It was a holiday for Americans, but we went out to dinner or lunch along the waterfront with me and my dog. We sat outside along the waterfront, via Napoli. And there was this older couple of men, these two men. We were right near the stairs at this particular place. There were two women up along the side of the building, and their purses were behind them. And we were at a table aside. And I tell you what, I saw it happening in front of me. But I didn't realize what was happening because I was mesmerized, and the man caught my attention. He kept my eye focus, while the other man, what was happening? These were older men. You would never have suspected this. They were dressed in suits. The man who caught my eye had a suit jacket over his arm, but he was wearing a suit too, so that was interesting. And the two women were behind him, and the other man that was with him, and I realized this after the fact. After the fact that this happened, I saw what had transpired in retrospect. I didn't see it, even though it was in front of me when it was happening. But then I realized after what I was seeing. The other man behind him had reached down and grabbed the purse of one of the women sitting at the small table behind them. They were standing the whole time, totally oblivious. This man's keeping an eye contact with me, making sure that I'm distracted by his eye contact. This was pure genius. This is sleight of hand. The other man got the other woman's purse. They left. They were gone. The women went to go pay, and the woman was freaking out like, my purse is gone. How did my purse disappear? And I witnessed the whole thing. The Carabinieres, the Italian police, came out, and I motioned them over to me, and I explained. I said, I saw what happened. I didn't realize it at the time what was transpiring. I said, it was so clever and so well done that I didn't see it until I hadn't seen, you know what I mean? Like, this was some Jedi mind trick. This is how they mind fuck you. Is they get you captivated in one area that in the periphery you might notice it, but you aren't going to catch it unless you're in enough awareness to have been able to, in retrospect, hindsight, really see what happened. That I told the policeman that I saw this man, he captured my eye, kept me mesmerized off to the side while the other man leaned over and stole the purse. I said, I did not realize that was what was transpiring. There was a part of me that actually thought they were all together. I thought the two women were with these two men. And she was so upset, obviously, because it took the purse. I mean, whether she ever found the purse again, that was a question. Most likely, the way that those things happened in Naples, they would take the money out and just throw the purse away, or the wallet or whatever. To ever get all your stuff back, that dime a dozen, if you're lucky, needle in a haystack. But that was fascinating to me. But that's the sleight of hand of the hidden hand going on in the world, is we will keep you over here. It's the Wizard of Oz syndrome. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We can really, they know psychology. This is age old, they've been doing this. Nothing is new under the sun. To act like, well, we didn't know that masks don't work and, bullshit. We know they don't. Are we seriously still playing these monkey games? We're doing what we're told based on man's ideas, and then at the same time contradicting when they've turned around and said one thing. Like, they're hypocrites. They tell you one thing and then they turn around and they try to say another thing. And it's like, is anybody ever paying attention to they were wrong the first time? So why are you going to listen to them now? Keep following the leader? You're going to end up like a lemming off the side of a cliff. And that's the setup. So if the holograms and they put something in the sky, then people are going to be like, oh my gosh, Henny Penny, the sky is falling. And you're like, oh, it's prophecy. And there you go. They're playing it out right there for all to see. But the prophecy isn't that they're predicting the future. They're getting you to manifest it. They're telling you what they are doing through prophecy and prediction. Not that it's happening randomly on a timeline, but that's what they're getting you to manifest because you're buying into the storyline. Be careful of the false prophets because they will get you to manifest in their image and profit from you while they're doing it. All the world's a stage. They need you to be enraged because that's what moves mountains. The stronger your emotion, the easier it is to control you, and it's also harvesting your energy. And it literally is a mind fuck. A Jedi mind trick. All this time. Wow. That was a lot. Just something to think about.
People have a need to feel important and knowledgeable, so they will take in the information around them into their form, literally, and parrot it as if it gives them some form of importance. Even the word importance means they're importing that sense, that it's not coming from within, that it has to come without, that they seek validation externally because they're in the know of it. And then, if and when it comes to fruition, They will reference their held belief as if it is validated and confirmed. But this isn't original thinking. This is a false sense of self-importance that is dictated by the indoctrination of the cults of personality, aka the education of the government that rules over the mind. The system is based upon memorization and repetition. You're not rewarded for your original creativity or thinking. Only the amount of useless information you retain to keep you insane tied to the system. See, it's the overstimulation of information that keeps you in confusion. They want people divided in themselves, so they will become divided with one another, because divide and conquer is their modus operandi.